Hi, I'm Alfie, and welcome back to the Decoded podcast. This episode is specifically designed for anyone who is currently job searching or thinking about new opportunities. I have worked in the recruiting sector for over a decade, and I've helped companies hire hundreds of employees. In this episode, I'm going to share all of my best ideas on CVs, LinkedIn, and interviews. So enjoy the episode and make sure that you hit the follow or subscribe button now. This is how to write an amazing CV. Start with your name, location, and contact details. So email address, mobile number, LinkedIn URL, and a link to your personal website if you have one. Some hiring managers or recruiters will prefer to email you, and some will prefer to call you. So it's really important that you make it as easy as possible for them to get in touch. I often see candidates make the mistake of including too many links in this section. You don't need to list your Instagram and your Facebook and so on. Just keep it simple. And remember that less is more. Under the contact details, I would recommend writing a super simple summary which outlines your key skills, experience, and current situation in a couple of sentences. For example, senior full stack engineer in London, expert in React, Python, and AWS, 7 years experience across fintech and startups, currently searching for tech lead opportunities for career progression. You do not need to write a full essay in this section. Just focus on a high-level overview so anyone reading it will instantly understand who you are and what you do. Next, I would feature your work experience, starting with your most recent job at the top. Keep this simple with your job title, the employer name, the location, the start and end dates, and a few bullet points about each position. In these bullet points, I would really focus on listing your specific key achievements. A really average example would be something like, I built software for sales teams in the banking sector. A much better way to frame this would be something like, I led 3 iOS mobile engineers building AI enterprise applications, which helped sales teams close 10 million plus in new business from Goldman Sachs. This is your opportunity to sell yourself. Don't waste the limited space on your CV with boring tasks and responsibilities. When someone reads these bullet points, it has to amaze them and blow them away. Also, for older positions, you don't need to write as much. Focus more on your recent successes. Below experience, I would include your education. For any degrees or certifications, list where you studied, what course you did, the dates you were enrolled, and the result you achieved. Unless you are a recent graduate with no real experience, you don't need to go into too much detail here. Also, if you have 10 plus certifications, you don't need to list them all. Just focus on a few which are most applicable to the role you are applying for. Under education, I would finish with a short mention of any personal projects or interests you might have. Bonus points if you can include links to your completed work. This could be an app you have built, or a blog that you write, or anything else which helps you stand out from other candidates. In terms of length, I would strongly recommend that you keep your CV to 2 pages maximum. The truth is that 99% of people will just very quickly skim read this before they make a decision to interview you or not. So if it's 3+ pages long, then you're probably diluting the quality of your achievements, which is only going to do you more harm than good. In addition, make sure that you use a spell check tool. It's perfectly fine if English isn't your first language, but it just looks unprofessional if your resume is full of spelling and grammar mistakes. In terms of format, keep the CV basic and easy to read. Fancy graphics and images look much better in your personal website and portfolio. Lastly, I would highly encourage you to use various AI tools to help make your writing more polished and concise. I'm now going to answer a few specific questions which some of you had on social media. Should I include a cover letter with my application? So about 1% of hiring managers and recruiters appreciate these, but the vast majority do not care. A long time ago, people would send their CV in the post to apply to jobs, and it was standard back then to include a cover letter in the envelope to give more context. But because of email, LinkedIn, and now AI, employers are overwhelmed with the amount of applications they receive. So they only have a few seconds to review each candidate. Because of this, I would personally recommend skipping the cover letter and focusing more on writing the best CV possible. What's the best way to explain employment gaps on a CV? I see so many CVs with huge gaps in employment, and the majority of candidates don't give any context as to the reasons why. If you went traveling, or you were raising your children, or if you had some health situation, these things are all perfectly fine. It can just be super helpful to add a brief mention about this, so the employer reading the CV doesn't have all these unanswered questions. What impact do keywords have in getting past recruitment software systems? This is super important, and most people don't even think about this. Hiring managers and recruiters often will receive hundreds of applications for each job, so they often use software to filter to the most suitable candidates. These screening technologies look for certain keywords on your CV, and then they match this to the job description. So, if you are an iOS developer, for example, but you only write mobile developer on your resume, then your CV might get rejected before a human even sees it, because the recruiting software didn't see iOS on your resume. So make sure that you include all of the relevant keywords to avoid this happening. And that's how to write an amazing CV. This is how to create an excellent LinkedIn page. Start with a professional profile picture. Don't use an old, low-quality image or some group photo of you and your friends in a bar. Just keep it simple and use a clean headshot. Also, make your header picture either branded to your current employer or a generic shot of something which represents the type of work that you do. Next, for your headline, write a summary which best represents your key skills and experience. For example, senior iOS engineer at Apple, 5 years mobile experience, expert in React and AWS. Below this, make sure your location is accurate so recruiters know where you are based. In your About section, write a few sentences which expand on your previous headline. For example, senior iOS engineer at Apple, working on the Apple Intelligence team. 5 years mobile experience, previously at Google and Deliveroo. Expert in React and AWS. Ranked in the top 5% worldwide on Stack Overflow. Next, in your featured section, include 1 or 2 links which you are really proud of. This could be your employer's website, or a time you were featured in the press, and so on. For your experience, keep this short and simple. Just include your job titles, employer names, dates, and maybe 1 or 2 sentences to summarize each position. The same applies to your education section. These should be high-level overviews, and you can go into all the specific details on your actual CV. Next, let's do some Q&A on the most popular questions that our subscribers have. How can I make my LinkedIn profile stand out? My biggest advice would be make sure you are frequently posting high-quality content. You could write articles relevant to your sector, or upload pictures of projects you are working on, or even share videos offering your opinion on different industry news. The possibilities are endless, but building a personal brand is one of the most powerful things you can do. If you can build a following, then this will massively set you apart from those who don't have one. What is something most people don't do which they should? That's a really good question. So if you have a personal website or blog, make sure that you also feature this in your contact info and in your custom link section. You can edit these on your profile page, and it will really help make your account look more professional. What do you think about the other profile sections like skills and recommendations? These are great extra bonuses if you have the time, but don't worry too much about them. LinkedIn is always testing out new features which come and go with time. And that's how to create an excellent LinkedIn page. Here is how to impress in your next job interview. Firstly, make sure that you do your research on the organization, the interviewers, and the job description. Before the call, check out the employer's website and connect with the hiring managers on LinkedIn. The more prepared that you are, the more confident you will be. Next, be a few minutes early. This way you have some breathing room in case there's any technical issues or travel delays. Showing up to an interview late creates such a bad first impression, so you should really try to avoid this at all costs. You should also demonstrate strong body language. 80% of communication is not what you say, it's how you say it. If you speak really quiet and your posture is closed off, then it's hard to build rapport. However, if you smile and speak with conviction and bring energy, then this generates really positive vibes. One of the most important things you can do is practice your answers to the most common interview questions. In almost every interview, you're going to be asked, "Tell me about yourself. Why are you looking for a new job?" and so on. Make sure that you have 30-second, well-polished responses ready to go. It's really obvious when somebody hasn't prepared. They talk in circles, going on and on for way longer than they need to. Focus on the key details so you don't risk boring the interviewer with your answers. I would also recommend you have a notepad and a pen in front of you. Sometimes you might be asked a question and it can be helpful to quickly jot down a few keywords so you can structure your answer better. Just make sure that you don't rely too much on this. It can mess up the flow of the conversation too much if you start writing down full sentences in the middle of an interview. Next, make sure you prepare a few really intelligent questions to ask at the end of the interview. Most of the time, they will ask you, "Do you have any questions?" And if you say no, then it makes you look like you are really not that interested in the opportunity. I'm sure there's lots you would like to know about the team, the roadmap, and the opportunities for progression. So make sure you have 2 or 3 deep questions ready to go. One of the biggest turn-offs in an interview is when a candidate starts criticizing or talking really negatively about their current or past employers. Even if what you are saying is true, nobody likes a complainer. So keep this in mind and focus more on the future than the past. Finally, just don't give up. Interviewing is a numbers game. Some people will like you and some people won't. The more interviews you do, the more offers you will receive. So play the game and be persistent along the way. Lastly, let's finish with some Q&A. What structure should I follow when answering questions? A good framework to follow is the STAR technique. The S stands for situation, the T stands for task, the A stands for action, and the R stands for result. So if I was asked a question about the most challenging problem I worked on, I could start by explaining the situation I was in. I could then talk about the tasks I worked on. I then could discuss the actions which I took, and I could then finish by sharing the result I achieved. For example, the most challenging problem I worked on was building a new app for Lloyds Bank. When I started, the software was really old and broken. I started by speaking to customers to understand their key complaints. I then implemented their suggestions and rebuilt the entire project from scratch, using modern technologies like React and TypeScript. As a result of this, in just 6 weeks, we rose to #1 in the App Store and won the Best FinTech App of the Year award. What's the most common mistake you see candidates make in an interview? I think most video interviews could significantly be improved with better quality video, audio, and lighting. The majority of candidates interview on their laptop, which usually has a really pixelated video, an average built-in mic, and really offers no lighting benefit. For a very small amount of money, you can buy a HD webcam, a super high quality microphone, and a bright professional light. This might sound like a small thing, but I promise this will massively elevate your call quality and is well worth the investment. What's the best dress code in an interview? I think this completely depends on the type of job you are applying for. And since most interviews now happen on video calls, you can be much more informal. If you are a lawyer, then showing up to an interview in shorts and a hoodie might not be the best idea. In the same way, if you are a software engineer, then appearing on a Zoom call wearing a suit and a tie might be slightly overkill. Just play it case by case, and if you are unsure, then smart casual almost always works. And that's how to impress in your next job interview. Thank you so much for checking out this episode. I really, really appreciate it. I hope it brought you some value. And if you haven't already, please remember to click subscribe or follow wherever you're watching this podcast now.